Greetings everyone, my name is Greg. In this video I am going to talk about the subject of free will. And I'll say right off the top, as far as the subject of free will is concerned, I am agnostic. I don't know if we have free will or not. But I do know that socially people need to think that we do. Because if it would be proven that we don't, I think the social harm that would come from that type of revelation or insight would be very damaging socially. Now, personally, I am skeptical to leaning towards I don't think we do. The reason being, you don't choose your hair color. You don't choose your, and I'm talking from birth. Yes, I realize people can change their hair color. That's not what I mean. You don't choose the hair color you're born with. You don't choose your eye color. You don't choose your skin color. You don't choose your shoe size. You don't choose your genetics. You do not choose your sexual orientation. And don't even get me started on these trans people. Because the truth of the matter is, personally, I don't give a damn what somebody wants to say they identify as. Because to me, the identifying as a gender, it is as meaningless as saying you identify with a political party. It is basically boiling down to people are trying to use that to get special rights, special privileges, and it shouldn't be. But the aspect of free will and choices that we make, we don't choose our sexual orientation because that is largely, if not entirely, chemicals in the brain. I never consciously chose to be attracted to women. It just happened. I just was. When I was a teenager and I would sneak up at night to watch Benny Hill. Yeah, I know I'm dating myself with that. But the aspect of bouncing boobs and so forth, it got my attention as a very young kid. Now, the fact that I didn't choose consciously, I didn't wake up one day and go, you know what, I'm going to like boobs now. No. Because one thing that you may have noticed from the various eye candy that I have up, and I don't say that to use the term disrespectful to women, not at all. It is simply, I would rather see that than a blue screen type of thing. It's something that I use the term eye candy because it's something that is visually appealing for me. And, but to finish that thought, I didn't choose consciously, didn't wake up one day and go, you know what, I'm going to like boobs now. It didn't happen that way. And if I didn't consciously choose to be attracted to women, and I didn't, then logically, I would say it is at least conceivable, if not probable, that somebody that is gay did not choose consciously to be gay, to be attracted to the same gender. What is far more likely is that the same, or basically the chemicals and so forth that are firing in the brain and that are released in the brain come puberty, that is what determines what somebody is going to be attracted to or whatnot. That it's things that we don't have conscious control over. Because anybody that wants to say that sexual orientation is a choice, my first question for you is, if you're a guy, when was the last time you chose to suck a dick? Because if you're going to try to say that it is a choice, that means you had to have made the choice somewhere along the line in order for you to make this claim. Otherwise, you are making a false claim. Or to use the term, a straw man. So, personally, I can't say it is a choice because I've never made the choice. It's just been, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I'm attracted to. And it's not just the female body. Because one of the things that you'll notice with the different pictures or eye candy that I have up is the women are busty. And to talk about the aspect of breasts for a minute, it doesn't matter to me, to use the term real or fake. I don't get hung up on stupid shit like that because if a woman has had breast enhancement, okay, so what? It's not, I'm not a stickler for they have to be real. Why? They have to be what they were born with. So what? Who cares? Because the truth of the matter is, I'm not into guys, I'm not into penises, but let's be honest, guys. If there was a surgery that you could undergo that would give you a larger dick, I would venture to bet a lot of guys would be looking at having penis enlargement. Or, to use another term for those that use Viagra or Cialis, is your hard on at that point fake because you're using a pill to achieve what you had when you were younger? If you're going to try and say that a woman having surgery to enhance their breasts means that their breasts are fake, if you're using a pill to enhance your sexual performance, is your sexual performance fake? Let's not have a double standard. How about that? But I have no problem with, to use the term, eye candy. And yes, I don't have pictures of guys and so forth on my videos for the simple fact I'm not into guys. Now, I recognize that some in my audience are women and they may want to see that. And it's something that, since I have the female on the one side that you see over there, or over there, but if my female subscribers would want to see basically equal treatment, I guess on that side, I could put a male if you really want to. I mean, in that regard, it doesn't matter to me. In that, I am neutral. But one of the things with that I would no doubt get some troll comments regarding is some would try to say, are you gay or are you bi? No. It would be an aspect of just catering to both sides. But in that, this whole idea of free will and choice, these are things that I didn't consciously choose to be attracted to. It's just the way it is. Now, for those that are wondering, in a sense, where the eye candy type of thing came from, I may not have talked about this, I'm not sure. That all started when I was back in my 20s. And I worked at an adult bookstore. Because I was working around women that were gorgeous, and they were 3/4 to fully naked constantly. And it was very distracting at first, but it got very quickly, I got adjusted to that environment. One could use the term desensitized. that a woman walking around with the cleavage and so forth, some may think, and I've seen comments from women of basically referring to it as masturbating to a calendar or whatnot. Truthfully, just seeing a woman naked is not enough for me. It doesn't do it. Because I've been around that. Basically, been there, done that. I saw it so much when I was in my 20s that I got desensitized to it. It takes more than just seeing a woman naked to basically get me to be losing my mind. It would take, as I have termed it, physical contact. And that is because of the environment that I was in and seeing it every day. But I know this is a bit off of free will, but I think it also goes along the same lines because it's dealing with choice and how when you're around an environment and you're there at a job doing it day in and day out, you do get a bit numb to it. It's like I have tried working in like a chicken plant. I just couldn't deal with it. It was an environment that I couldn't stomach. I didn't last there more than a day because of the nature of that industry. But somebody that is in that environment and they are there day in and day out, I can really see where the aspect of death, of animals dying and so forth, for them, it would be no biggie. It wouldn't be an issue. And that would be partially the desensitizing from the environment that they work in. And there could also be other aspects with those in law enforcement where they would get basically desensitized to some levels of violence or domestic problems and so forth. I don't know. I've never been in law enforcement. I don't know what type of basically conditioning that type of job instills. I do know from the working with unloading trucks, even though I'm a smoker and I'm a bit of a heavy smoker, when it would come time for throwing truck, I would have the stamina to throw a truck full speed for 2 hours. Whereas somebody coming in that wouldn't be, there would be a non-smoker, they'd be sucking wind going and basically even halfway through the truck. They'd be, as I've heard termed it with wrestlers, they'd be blown out. They're just basically, they wouldn't have the physical conditioning because they're just coming into that environment. They haven't had the day in and day out of the pace. So they're basically not used to it. So they get blown. And they get to where they can't basically keep up. To where after maybe a week, they would be more than likely, if they're a non-smoker, the pace, their body would adapt very rapidly. But the thing is, any job, when you first go into it, you're going to have an adapting, a getting used to. Like if you're at a job where you can have like candy because of like the nature of, because I've been around the packaging plants and so forth where they have candy in the break room. And even though I do like chocolate, I like to have candy bars around. It's one when you're around it all the time, and I know this from having worked in that briefly, when you have it there constantly, you get to where you're like, you know what, I don't want it. Just like when I worked in restaurants, the you're working around food all the time. At least for me, when I would get done work, the last thing I would want to do is eat. In the same, because like when I went to mixology school to be a bartender, my dad flipped out because he was thinking I'd become an alcoholic, and I pointed out to him when I worked in restaurants, I didn't become fat just because I worked in restaurants. In fact, I ate less because I worked in restaurants. So I never actually did the bartending thing too much, but I don't drink as it is, or rarely drink. So it's one of, if I would be making drinks for people, why would I be inclined to drink? I mean, because it would be the same as with food and so forth. It's, in large part, it's, I think, the aspect of what you're around all the time, you get desensitized to it. So the aspect of all of this is environmental, is what I'm getting at. All of these things, these are, you could say they're choices that you make in life because of wanting to have a job and needing to. And in some ways, in minor ways, yes, we have choice. You have a choice as to whether or not you're going to just up and quit a job. But there is also with that the practicality of, now when you're younger, you can do things that are more impulsive and stupid. Been there, done that. And have it to where you can basically get a bug up your ass, and I've done it, about something at a company and just be, fuck it, I quit. And then just job jump. But for the most part, when you basically grow up, there comes a point, because every job's going to piss you off at some point or another. There comes a point where you look at it and you're like, you know what? Yeah, I'm a bit pissed at the moment, but one of, I need the job for now. One of, I can look elsewhere. I can look to what can I do that I would really enjoy, because this is not it. But for the time being, until that other comes in, you can't really up and quit, especially when you have rent to pay and if you have kids and so forth. Because when you're single, like I was young in my 20s and 30s, it can get to where you're like, you know what? I don't have others depending on me like I do now. So I could take more of a fuck it, I don't care attitude. Because the only one I had to concern myself with was me. But some of this also comes into genetics. And that's a more underlining that I'm getting at. Because genetics is something you don't choose. But there are people like Richard Kuklinski, who was called the Iceman. And I listened to the interviews with him after he was in prison, and I found them very interesting because personally, I am one that leans more towards, I want to understand the mind of this person. And I want to think about different things and take a more philosophical approach, a deeper approach. One of the things, I don't know if I had a genetic predisposition for like the religion subject that I do, that I've gone into in various videos, in lots of videos. But as far as like my family background, My grandfather, who I never met, he died of Lou Gehrig's disease before I was born. But my grandfather, or my mom's dad, was a Lutheran minister. I don't know if from birth that I had a genetic predisposition towards religious belief and towards that type of mindset. I don't know. I know I had people saying to me when I was 18 and so forth that I should be a minister. And it just, for me, it felt like that was not the path for me. At the time, when I still was a Christian, yes, I felt like, to use the term, God was saying that's not the path for you. The ironic part with that is if a God would exist, it would have known, yeah, your path, that's not your path. Yours is the opposite. In a sense, you would be an anti-preacher, not a preacher. And it would be the irony of it for something like that. Because from the aspect of if a God would exist, given all of the factors, all of the things in a person's life that they do not choose, that because you don't choose your parents either, and your genetics, your parents, the environment you're born into, the socioeconomic, all of it will factor in during the early years of your life to form the basis of how you're going to view life, reality. Your outlook on life will be formed by, I think I've heard it's the age of 3. And in that regard, it is something that I think we don't have enough research going into the aspect of just how much has been basically determined from either, I don't like the term programming, but that's about what it amounts to. Be it the programming genetic and you have absolutely no choice, or the parents and upbringing that you have growing up, all of that programming you and in basically gearing you in one direction. And something else that can also be taken in is this. And I can give you a bit of basically because I'm addicted to soda. My dad was a head grocery buyer at a grocery warehouse all of my childhood. And during my childhood years type of thing, the company he worked for, the salesman that would come in would give him samples to take home, and basically they would be wanting his company to buy their product, so they would be, here, try this and see what you think. There was one point he brought home a case of Jolt soda. For those of you that don't know what Jolt is soda similar to Coca-Cola, but with twice the caffeine and twice the sugar. Well, my dad brought a case of this stuff home when I was a young kid. And I absolutely loved it. I've always been one for the sweet. Even when, on the few times that I drink now, I don't really care for beer. It's too bitter. I've drank beer every so often, but not too much. I'm more for mixed drinks, the drinks that are sweet. And it's something that my girlfriend had said, because as far as junk food, she's not really interested in sweets too much as far as chocolate. She's more a salty. Now, I do get to where I like Cheetos and chips and so forth, the salty type of thing. But for the most part, where the direction I lean by, if you want to say by impulse, that where I'll go without thinking about it is towards what's sweet. And that is something I don't think I ever consciously chose either. And all of this, all of these factors coming together, if a God would exist, it would know all of these various elements that will play a role in determining what somebody's choices will be and their actions. And even you could go so far as to say what thoughts they'll have and where those impulses would be. It would know everything that's going to set up for that this will lead to this, will tie to this, to tie to this. So ultimately, and if 99% of it are things that you have no control over, and all you have is maybe 1% control, how much control do you really have? Is it, if it's just a 1% type of thing, I would tend to lean more towards you don't really have control. Because most people in life will make snap decisions. That you'll decide to do something, you'll decide to watch a video, or you'll decide you're going to like something on impulse. That you won't really deeply analyze why you're making this choice or that. You just go with, in a sense, the impulse and what you automatically lean to. And in that regard, I don't think it's a matter of free will. I think it's a matter of programming. Be it the programming by genetics or the programming by the social conditioning that comes from your upbringing and society in general. All of these things, all of these factors that come in to shape who you are. And if you extend this to the aspect of an afterlife, which I have a lot of problems with because of the aspect of consciousness and the brain, and there's no evidence that consciousness can exist without the brain. Given that fact, let's say for the sake of hypothetical that there is something, you most certainly would not be, you may initially be as you were in life, but the new environment, the expanded understanding, especially realizing, one, that the physical body that you had, it's not really who you are, well, then that would take your ideas and your self-identity, the ego that we have, and it would completely shatter it, which would render a person, I would think, initially be not knowing what to make of this or that. That people think that they, like Christians, would think that they would like see the Jesus character and automatically gravitate to it. And they may initially, but as other factors would kick in, like knowing that those that you loved are being tortured, I would think a lot of people that will be diehard Christians in life would look at that, and when they're confronted with, and they would not be able to deny it, would have a hard time compartmentalizing to where they could be, oh, it's what they deserve. to be that cold and that, as I would term it, straight up evil. I think a lot of people would have a problem doing that because I honestly don't believe that people are inherently that wicked. Because that is what it comes down to. But one can also extend this, in a sense, this idea even further and consider somebody that is, to use the term, Muslim. That, let's say, for the sake of hypothetical, that this afterlife would be a Christian base. Imagine the shocker that Muslims would have. Or, since a lot of people in the United States are Christian, imagine you die and you find out, yep, the Muslims were right after all. First thing you would be dealing with is the, oh, fuck. And then all of the other. Because there would be so many things that would be flooding into your whatever mind you would have. I would think it would fry you. That it would be overload. Especially if, let's say, for the sake of hypothetical, it's not the Muslims, it's not the Christians, it's the Norse. It's Odin. It's Odin, Thor, Loki, the Norse gods. They're largely forgotten in our world now, but what if they're actually the right ones? Or the Greek? Or Egyptian? That your heart's weighed against a feather type of thing. Christians want to act like it's either their way or nothing. That's not the possibilities here. Because there are thousands of different religions. And we have no more evidence of the one than the other. But regardless of what it would be, if there would be something after we die, there would be so much overload. I personally don't see how anybody would be able to function initially. Because it would be, to use the term, culture shock. They would have to adjust to whatever the rules are in that society that they're in. Much like the way somebody comes into this life, a child, they don't come into this knowing a goddamn thing. They have no conception of anything. They're a blank slate. To use a computer term, their hard drive is wiped. And it's a matter of what information are you putting into that hard drive. And the genetics and so forth, what's the base programming that is on that hard drive. And things like that will ultimately shape and decide the direction that one's going to go. And how much of it is not even their choice. And that's what I'm getting at. And that is something that I honestly don't know, percentage-wise, how much of who we think we are, is decided by, to use, one could say random, or the aspect of the natural selection, that it is decided during the 9 months you're cooking, in the womb type of thing, that your body is developing. The genetics is set in place. It's all, basically the cards are dealt. And all you're doing when you're born is you're playing the hand. Here's the cards you're dealt, now play them. And in that regard, I think a lot of it would come down to, we think we make choices, and like I said at the start of this, socially, where we are, I think we need that. Because I don't think, at least for most people, I don't think they could handle having it that these things were already decided for you. I think that would throw a lot of people into chaos. So, in that regard, even if we really don't have free will, I think it's better socially that people think we do. So, in that regard, it would be something that I wouldn't necessarily be trying to, in a sense, pull the rug out from under. It's hard enough for some of them, the aspect that I'm trying to pull out the rug of religion, because that gets into ripping out their identity. I think it's a smaller part, and maybe for some, the aspect of my trying to rip away the religion is no different. That it would be seen as just as much throwing them into chaos. And I do understand the fears that a person would have initially. Been there, done that. But I also recognize you can overcome it. And when I say you can overcome it, I am going by myself as the standard. But I am also intelligent enough to realize not everybody is as, to use the term, well grounded in reality as I am, especially people that want to gravitate to mystical woo woo thinking. I understand that even though I don't regard arguments from ignorance as a logical line of thought, because it's a logical fallacy, there are some that could look at it and be seeing that as valid. Just like there are some, and I can't believe that they're not just straight up trolling, but there are some that actually believe the earth is flat. Boggles my fucking mind. I cannot relate to these people at all because their idea is so far beyond the pale to me. I can't get my head around how they have warped their brain or the ignorance that is required to go along with this. I just can't get it. But by the same token, I can no longer understand why somebody would embrace a religion, even though when I was younger, I did. But feel free to leave your thoughts and comments on this. And it's something, because this is a much deeper subject than I could fully thrash out. I just hope, in a sense, I hope the little asides that I got to along the way of this, that it was at least interesting for you. And feel free to share your thoughts on the subject of free will and the things that we may not necessarily realize that we don't choose. Because I'm sure there's things that I didn't even mention that we don't have a choice. But feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Later, people.